In all the coverage about the Christchurch earthquakes, you've probably heard of CERA. Now, Julian, what is CERA?
Well, CERA is our receptionist here, but as well as that, CERA stands for the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority. I'm not sure whether that had any influence over her getting the job. But yeah, the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority is a government agency that was set up to manage the process of the recovery after the devastating earthquakes in September 2010, and in particular after February 22nd.
And they've been given some quite high-level powers. They've had to decide on which land should be rebuilt on and which shouldn't. How was that whole process done?
So that was a very difficult process, and if you've followed any of the media about that, you've seen that there's lots of different opinions about how that should have been done and how it has been done. But basically, land was damaged. On the flat land was damaged by liquefaction primarily, and also by a process called lateral spreading, which is where on the edges of a river the land will tend to kind of slump into the river. So investigations were done on that land based on a range of different factors. Reported liquefaction, so there were some streets where just enormous amounts of mud came out of the ground and needed to be shoveled away. And that in particular situation, I think, changed Canterbury's and Christchurch's attitude to students, because the student volunteer army organised themselves through social media about 1,000 volunteers who worked over several weeks to move all of that liquefaction. So some of the observed land damage was pretty easy. You could go and look. Some of that was done using a technique called LiDAR, where a plane flies overhead and emits lasers, and those lasers bounce back and they measure distance really accurately. So comparing that LiDAR with LiDAR that had been taken before the earthquake gave an indication of land levels. And then the next way was geotechnical investigation, so basically drilling holes in the ground and engineers using particular techniques to look at whether the ground was susceptible to further damage. So that led to the land zoning process, where land was zoned initially 4 colours, green, red, orange and white. And green meant you're okay, you could rebuild, the land was unlikely to be substantially damaged. And red was where further damage was pretty likely, very likely, so likely in fact that it would make it really not economically feasible to rebuild on that land.
Okay, and if you take into account the fact that way back when Christchurch was settled, much of the area was swamp, it's probably not surprising that we've ended up with large areas being red zoned. 7,000 houses in fact, and then we've got the areas in the Port Hills, which we saw on Wednesday were at risk of rockfall in some places. So for people, obviously a huge concern as to what their zone would be, and you had to tell thousands of people. How did you do that?
TradeMe was the easy answer. TradeMe has a extremely large website, as I'm sure all of you know, and because we, when the land zone announcements were made, needed to be able to communicate that really quickly, TradeMe set up a website for us for free, and that let you type in your address. It was called Land Check, and you could see whether your website was, whether your property was green zoned or red or orange, which was meaning a decision had not yet been made, or white, which was Port Hills. So that website took something like 2 million page views in the first hour, which is a really huge amount. And so that was the first way that we did it. TradeMe, like many other people who have sort of pitched in to provide support, that was some unique support that they could provide because they had that unique capacity. We then migrated that functionality, that website, to the CERA website so that people could come in and type their address in and find out information as the land zone announcements rolled out over time. That first announcement was super popular. The other ones were kind of a bit smaller, a bit lower over time. So we were able to use particular technologies that took a little longer to deploy, but use cloud infrastructure like Amazon in order to be able to take those peak loads whenever we had a new announcement.
So essentially, that GIS system that has the property boundaries was used to inform the public. So it's not just used for decision makers, it's used for communicating as well.